This is Apollo Saturn Launch Control. We're just passing the 1 hour mark in our countdown. Now in the final hour of the countdown toward the launch of Apollo 13. The closeout crew has now left the White Room area and will be standing by for the retraction to the 12-degree position of swing arm number 9. We've received word from the distinguished guest site that the stands over there are near capacity with some 4,500 guests in the area. The Vice President of the United States, Spiro Agnew, and Chancellor Willy Brandt, his special guests, have arrived in the area, although they are not at the stands yet. Out on the causeway at a guest site, we have 7,000. This is the largest guest number that we have ever had on our causeway site. It is a kerosene-type fuel and was loaded before the countdown demonstration test back in mid-March. The cryogenic loading went well. There's over 800,000 gallons of cryogenics loaded aboard the Saturn V vehicle at this time. We entered a 1 hour built-in hold. This is a planned hold at the T-minus 3 hour and 30-minute mark. And the Director of Launch Operations, Walt Kaprian, has given Apollo 13 a go for launch. We're now approaching the 4-minute mark. At the T-minus 4-minute mark, we'll be standing by for Jack Baltar, the launch vehicle test conductor, to say that his launch vehicle team is ready to carry out the final phase here of the countdown. At the T-minus 3-minute 7-second mark, we will get the ignition sequence start. This will put craft equipment now is on its own internal cooling. It's been sharing its cooling getting its cooling from an external power source up to this time. We're now approaching the T-minus 1 minute mark. T-minus 1 minute, T-minus 1 minute, and counting. Now in the final minute of our countdown, at the 30-second mark, swing arm number 1 will retract. T-minus 50 seconds. As we pass the T-minus 50-second mark, the power transfer takes place. First stage, second stage, third stage, and the instrument unit going to internal power. T-minus 37 seconds, and our count continues to go well. We'll be looking for an ignition of those 5 first stage engines at the T-minus 8.9 second mark. We've passed T-minus 30, T-minus 25 seconds and counting, and Apollo 13 is go. T-minus 20 seconds, T-minus 20 seconds and counting. 17, guidance release. 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. Ignition sequence has started. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have commit and we have liftoff at 2:13. The Saturn V building up to 7.6 million pounds of thrust, and it has cleared the tower.
This is Mission Control Houston. We appear to have a good first stage at this point. Flight Dynamics Officer says the trajectory looks good. We show 1/2 mile in altitude at this time.
13 Houston, go at 30 seconds.
Roll complete and we're pitching.
Roger that. Stand by for mode 1 Bravo. Mark 1 Bravo.
1 Bravo. Command.
Altitude 1.2 miles, velocity 1,500 feet per second.
Houston, go at 1. We show the cabin relieving.
13, roger.
And at 1 minute 10 seconds, we show an altitude of 4.1 nautical miles. Downrange 1 mile. All sources continue to report we're go. The trajectory on our plot boards is right on the pre-planned line.
Roger this. And go for staging, Capcom.
Confirm and board out, flight.
Roger.
Staging, flight.
Roger. Flight filer trajectory confirmed staging. Roger.
Flight booster, then board out was way early.
Okay.
Flight confirmed, number 5 engine down.
Roger. Booster, you don't see any problem with that though, do you?
Negative, not right now, flight. All the other engines are go.
The next step in the routine of lunar flight was to burn out of Earth orbit toward the moon, then pull free of the third stage and dock with the lunar module Aquarius. At the controls of the command module Odyssey, Jack Swigert.
We're hard docked, Houston. Roger, understand hard dock. Good deal.
They pulled Aquarius away from the Saturn third stage, the S-4B.
Okay, I can see the S-4B now at the hatch window.
Odyssey and Aquarius moved away from Earth toward the moon.
Hey, Houston, we've had a problem here. Can say again, please. Houston, we've had a problem.
It was plagued by bad omens and bad luck from the very beginning.
Looks good here, flight. Good agreement.
Years before the flight, when the spacecraft was being built, a damaged liquid oxygen tank was installed in the spacecraft. The tank had been dropped on the factory floor. A little piece of plumbing had prevented the normal procedure for removing oxygen after a routine test prior to the flight. And then on the day before flight, we filled up the tank again with liquid oxygen, and it was a bomb waiting to go off.
This is the crew of Apollo 13. Wish everybody there a nice evening, and we're just about ready to close out our inspection of Aquarius and get back to a pleasant evening at Odyssey. Good night.
Actually, it was the end of the workday. We were fixing to go to bed after we did a few things to clean up, and the next morning go into lunar orbit and get ready to land. And then it was a large bang.
When the explosion first occurred, we didn't know what happened.
And that just rang through the metallic structure.
Houston, we've had a problem.
I was in the lunar module, and then I went down into the command module.
We may have had an instrumentation problem, flight. Roger.
And we had a pretty large bang associated with the caution and warning there.
We started to look at the instrument panels. One of the quantity gauges of one of the tanks was 0. That was the tank that had blew. I then looked out the window and saw escaping at a high rate of speed a gaseous oxygen, because the explosion occurred on the damaged tank, but that also ruptured the second tank, just blew the entire side of the spacecraft off.
My immediate feeling was just a sick feeling of pit of my stomach, of disappointment. I knew we had lost the landing.
And from then on, it was not a third landing on the moon, but a survival of how to get home.
Okay, I want you to double check my arithmetic to make sure we got a good course of line.
Go flight. How's the arithmetic? Stand by, we're checking.
At the time, it's scary as the devil, and we were handling something that we knew was out of control. And every team that came on was dealing with a major set of problems to deal with. They just jumped to the task, and they knew what they had to do.
Okay, now let's everybody keep cool. We got the LEM still attached. The LEM spacecraft's good, so if we need to get back home, we got a LEM to do a good portion of it with.
One of the biggest things we had to do in the dying moments of the electrical system in the command module was to transfer the guidance system and transfer the angle numbers from the command module to the lunar module. And we only had about 15 minutes to do that.
About 20 minutes after the explosion, it was obvious that we weren't coming to a landing in the moon. We were going to go around it. Glenn had already been down in the trench with the trajectory guys and came up with 5 trajectory return to Earth options.
So we would have missed the Earth. had we done nothing. So the first thing was to get us in the right direction to go around the moon. And that was the first maneuver we made. We used the landing engine, the engine we normally would land it on the moon.
Everybody seemed to be moving in the right directions without being directed. Everybody had a sense of what had to be done. The training guys brought the simulators up over there, and the crews were over in the simulators tracking virtually everything they were doing. Every configuration change that was proposed to be done was already being worked over in the simulators there. So you started getting answers from all these various directions.
The command module was very wet. There was water everywhere. In the LEM, there's no inner walls, so you could see water on all the connectors, wire bundles, plumbing, every turn of glob of water. And the command module, we actually had to get towels out to wipe off the instrument panel to see the instruments.
We copied that report from Jim Lovell of service module separation at 138 hours.
And there's one whole side of that spacecraft missing.
Is that right? Okay, copy that. Farewell, Aquarius, and we thank you.
So it was a question of getting this entire world geared and oriented to one single job: get the crew home.
Teamwork was necessary. Good leadership, initiative to think outside of the box. When things go wrong, how do we repair them? Those are the three things that were absolutely necessary.
I was most proud of being in this team that knew what they had to do, and there was no doubt about it. The team completely faced up to what had to be done. In this case, it was a survival challenge that we were faced with. So there you are, we pulled that off.
RCS-A stands at 62% and B at 62%.
I feel we've gone a hell of a long time without any sleep. We're going to have to start thinking about getting people back to sleep again because I didn't get any sleep last night at all.
Command module just slowly kept going down in temperature until I think just prior to re-entry, it was down to about 38 degrees. And along with that, it was a sort of a chilling coldness. The walls were perspiring, the windows were completely wet, and it wasn't too healthy. I recall that we went in there to get some hot dogs one day, and it was like reaching into the freezer for the food.
If you want my opinion of how they handled the situation when it happened, they handled it exactly like we'd expect them to. They were about as well on top of it as anybody could be who knew on what we knew, which isn't very much, I'll have to admit. But I think they did everything right within the knowledge that was available to us in a timely fashion, which is what all we expect of them. I think they did a beautiful job of it.
We actually had a third little sleep restraint, which Fred then put on and buttoned up and kept a little bit warm.
The astronauts faced another problem, their own exhaled breath. The lithium hydroxide chemical to take carbon dioxide out of the air was not sufficient in the lunar module. They would have to adapt the canisters from the command module to fit the hoses in the LEM. On the ground, an adapter was fashioned from materials the crew had available in the LEM: cardboard from a checklist, plastic bags, and tape. After checkout in an environmental chamber, the directions for construction were sent up to Aquarius.
At this point in time, I think the partial pressure of carbon dioxide was reading about 15 millimeters. And we constructed 2 of these things and put them online, and I think within an hour, the partial pressure of CO2 was down to 2/10.
So you see that survival now became one of initiative and ingenuity, and it was one which the ground continually helped us along. We had all kinds of people on the ground trying to think up ways of extending our lifetime.
There would be still another burn, a mid-course correction to get Apollo 13 into the narrow corridor through the atmosphere for a safe return to Earth.
We're at burn attitude, flight.
Knowledge.
Ignition. Thrust looks good. Shut down.
Hang in there, it won't be long.
There were moments when I didn't know how much consumables we had, whether we could make it back or not, but in a situation like that, there's only one thing you can do. You just keep going, and you just keep thinking up where you can get more consumables. And so that's exactly what we did.
On April 17th, they prepared for re-entry. After a small course correction burn, they jettisoned the damaged service module.
SF,
Copy that.
and there's one whole side of that spacecraft missing.
Is that right?
The whole panel is blown out, almost from the base to the engine.
It's really a mess. Man, that's unbelievable.
Next, they got back into Odyssey to jettison Aquarius prior to entry into the atmosphere.
Left jettison. Okay, copy that. Farewell, Aquarius, and we thank you. Okay, LOS in a minute or a minute and a half. At entry attitude, we'd like Omni Charlie. And welcome home.
Thank you.
Odyssey Houston standing by, over.
Okay, go over.
Odyssey Houston, we show you on the mains. It really looks great.
Apollo 13, this is recovery, over. They're going through 5,000. Roger, Apollo 13, this is recovery, and your chutes look good. Apollo 13, this is recovery. We observed your RCS burn, over. three chutes are displaced in the water. 0 degrees magnetic 3.5 miles. He will came up. Kilo 0, roger. This is 401. The command module is stable 1 at this time. They're riding comfortably. The vertical axis are approximately 15 degrees. Swim 1, you're cleared in the position for 3, the other 2 units. Swim 1, roger. Okay, left 2, you win last 270. Apollo 13, this is recovery, over.
I recall, Captain, that when I spoke to you on the phone, you said that you regretted that you were unable to complete your mission. I hereby declare that this was a successful mission. From the start, the exploration of space has been hazardous adventure. The voyage of Apollo 13 dramatized its risks. The men of Apollo 13, by their poise and skill under the most intense kind of pressure, epitomized the character that accepts danger and surmounts it.
Once we were into entry, which was incidentally done fully automated, it was pretty much the normal entry all the way down, and all 3 chutes came out. And kind of miraculously, since we had abused the vehicle, the mothership, by freezing it for 4 days, the water tanks were frozen when they recovered it on board the ship. So we exceeded specifications on all the avionics, certainly. It gave us the second most accurate splashdown of the program.
So it was a question of getting this entire world geared and oriented to one single job, get the crew home. And boy, the teams worked out great.
And it didn't need coaching. It just happened. And we all knew each other. We all were comfortable with who could do what and so on. So there you are. We pulled that off.
Actually, I guess when the parachutes came out and they blossomed and we landed on the water and didn't sink, I think we were home safe.
Well, of course, when we hit the water, we were very happy to be back home, and we commented on that fact. The recovery of 13 was almost textbook recovery. It was a calm day. The actual splashdown itself was very mild, and the Navy did a grand job.
If anything, has increased my confidence in the ability of this nation's space program to take an unusual situation and react to it and come out with a successful conclusion. I consider recovery of the crew a successful conclusion of it. But I have nothing but the utmost admiration for the people on the ground who work tireless hours to get us back.
Sometime this year I'll have had 15 years with NASA, and I don't figure I'll retire for another 30 maybe. So I'll just do whatever job the agency decides is the best place I can be and to contribute the most.